All righty. All right. Title of my paper, it was Yes, I Will. Basically, when we started praying through the project, God just kept telling me, I've given you a thing to do. I've given you this. I've given you that. But you've resisted me. So why do you continue to resist me when I ask you to do something? And the immediate answer was, you're stubborn. But me telling myself, not God, God just kind of smiled at me and said, okay, you know what you're doing. So I said, okay, if I will just quiet the noise in my head and quit doing what I want to do and think I should be doing, let's see how this goes. So I said, okay, God, yes, I will. I'll do what you say. And it really hit me in a profound way about how much I had actually been disagreeing with God. And I'm like, okay, now I see that there's a purpose for me taking the time to research and dig into who God is and the greatness that we can't even begin to understand just because it's so eternal. So he's like, tell you what, let's get together. Let's partner up a little bit. After the title, let's go into kind of some of my visions of what God has led me to see in the last 5 or 6 years was dysfunction. Not all churches have dysfunction, but he let me experience some churches that did have dysfunction. And at the time I was like, okay, man, this is a great church. This is great people, great socialization, but something's missing. What's missing? Well, I don't know enough, so let's just keep pushing forward. And the deeper I got and the more involved I got, I realized that the church wanted to keep me busy, because as long as I was busy, I wasn't seeking. I wasn't trying to learn or press into the Lord to see what he had. I was staying busy to be involved in the church, the little four-sided building with a bunch of people inside, but not involved with what God had planned. So I was on this little Titanic floating around in the water doing the jobs I'd been asked to do, because I thought I'm serving the church, and in serving the church, I'm serving God. But I found out how wrong that was. And God kind of highlighted with me the histories of the church and how many times man has stepped in to the words that he had the writers of the scriptures say and put to paper, that they took a different approach. They didn't agree with something the way it was interpreted. So then we take a Christian, religion, but Christian based society, and we start dividing it into different pieces. Everybody's, hey, there's a Baptist, there's a Methodist, there's Lutheran, there's Catholic, but each one of these stemmed from a disagreement with one church body and a scholar, or a man that took the word that had been written and understood and either challenged it, right or wrong, but created more division. And one point I'd like to bring up, and it kind of hit me hard, was that, I'm a math and science guy, always have been. But there's no mathematical formula that division causes an increase other than smaller parts. So as the body began to divide itself into smaller pieces, it was losing strength and becoming watered down. So as it became watered down, kind of like we saw in Malachi, God's working on this. Guys, I'm trying to give y'all all the chances you can to build this together, but you guys are splitting off and running away in different directions. The last time y'all wanted to do this, I flooded everything, but I'm not going to do it this time. I'm going to leave you on your own. I'm going to disappear for a few years. You do your own thing. So the church kind of got stuck in that stigma of let's keep people in churches, let's keep them busy. And I'm sure there are different purposes at different areas, but the experience I had was the churches were trying to keep their members busy to be busy, because busy keeps you focused on the task at hand and you're not looking outside of what the church offers. And that's what led me into the new ministry. God said, "Hey, I got something for you." And I was like, "Hey, I get to partner with the king, the most powerful king that's ever existed, creator of everything down to the last molecule of air. And he wants me to partner with him. What have I got to do with this?" So I realized that it was time for me to quiet myself. And because you imagine me being quiet, but me being quiet and pressing in and saying, "God, okay, instead of me being busy, I'm going to sit with you. And I want to see what you have for me. What do you ask me to do?" And the cool thing was, not only did God's plan definitely a lot better than mine, but he included me in it. And he said, "You know what? There's some things that there's some freedom in. And that's a spot where you feel that need. Here's the basic structure, the how and the why, but the means for you to accomplish it are at your disposal. Which way you choose is completely up to you." But he really laid it out that and the vision he gives me a lot is basically of everything being burned to rubble, just flattened concrete and dust, just nothing but ash. And he says, this is where the church has got to be. We've got to take what is, bring it down, and get it back to the foundation that it was founded on. It was founded on the Word of God. We've gotten too complicit in adding comfort, adding flash, adding marketing, which is all good if it's done with the right purpose and the right focus. But when it takes God out of the picture, now it's just a bunch of guys trying to create, and my wife likes to use the word production. And that's what it was. Instead of a gathering of like-minded people that wanted to press into the Lord and learn from God, you got 2 or 3 scriptures and don't go over a 30-minute sermon that kind of point to what the Word of God says, but it's between entertainment sessions. And let's see, it becomes just almost painful to know that that was never God's intention. And I asked him why. I said, "Why is it that this has become so convoluted? Why is it that the people here think they're doing anything?" He's like, "Because their view of my word is just like the other divisions of the church and the other denominations that were formed. They have taken what my word says and put their opinion on it to create yet another division, even within the divisions. So they're weakening my church, and I need people to stand up." And I said, "But why me? I've horrible things." And he's like, "Yeah, I know every single one of them, but you asked for me to forgive, and I did. And you are loved more than you'll ever realize until you get home. But know that my love is what's going to continue to pour into you so that you can pour out to others." And you want to talk about something that will rock your world. And God says, "You know what? Yeah, I know all the crap you did. Guess what? Still love you. Still want you. Still got plans for you." So then, we got this ministry idea. And I'm sitting here, I've got a job, I've got money. I don't have a lot of money, but I have enough to make a decent living. God says, hey, guess what? We're going to break out and do some new things. New things like buying a building, buying this, trying to procreate an experience based on his word, basically out of thin air. So we start budgeting what we're going to be able to put into it. Start looking for a property at times when property values are super inflated. But even though the property values were inflated, so trying to find a property was almost impossible. And we found a property, we looked at it, and it would have worked great, but the price tag on it was just insurmountable. Well, we weren't quite ready yet. We were still struggling through the muck and the mire at the church we were at. We hadn't quite agreed with God where he said we needed to go. But once we'd made that break, that church dropped in price almost overnight. And we're like, wow, look, that church is almost half price of what it was. Well, let's go look at it now. And the day we looked at the church and we're like, okay, that might be great and it needs some work, God sent me somebody else that would help with the expense of the church, just a friend that needed another church. And we knew the church needed repairs. They were willing to take over the repairs for a reduced lease. And God knit that together because we had been obedient to, turning in keys, blessing our church leaders, and leaving under good terms with the only explanation that God said, it's time for us to go. It's time for us to go. He had something new for us. Not knowing what it was, we just stepped out and said, okay, let's go. So once we got the property situated, and then it was on like Donkey Kong. It was time to start building the church. We had to rehab it, make a substantial investment, which I don't know where the money came from. God made us capable of handling everything he needed us to take care of. And he gave Sharon and I the vision, mostly her, because hers is more of the artistic, spiritual vision of what the church was supposed to look like. Not the church body, but the church building. And once that was in place, God's like, okay, now you've got to start building the people. Find the people, invite the people. You can't stand back and put a sign up in one corner of town that says, hey, come join us at this new church. You've got to be proactive. You've got to go out. You've got to introduce the people in your life that are around you, whether they agree with you or not. Go reach the people and tell them, hey, I got this new thing going on. It's a different day of the week. I don't want to interrupt you going to church on Sundays, but guess what? We've got a service on Friday. We'd love to have you come. Brief service, a little bit of word, a little bit of worship, a whole lot of Jesus. Come join us. Have a good time. We started out with an open house, kind of, hey, here's who we are. Here's what we're about. Everybody come get some snacks. Tell us what you think. Tell us, where your heart is. Would you like to hang out with us? Would you like to help build a congregation and create something that, I'm sure there are others around. It's just almost an awakening experience that God had planned, that things are in order and that he wants his people to start coming together. So he came in and he's like, look, he said, there's so many people that are just wandering through life right now as sheep. They're fine being pushed around, being shepherded, being told what to do. But right now, I need you to create lions. I need you to speak to these people. I've given them gifts, and they would rather be followers than adhere to my word, that they have gifts and strengths. They need someone that will go with my authority and speak to them that they are gifted and that God says they're gifted, so that someone outside of their family or their current circle will witness to them that, guess what? God's given you a gift, and it's time you use it. So as we start pouring into other people, I kind of looked into the term pastor, and I had a few people come up and say, "Hey, yeah, you got a church, bought a church, great. Are you the pastor?" And I'm like, "Yep, no, not me, not my job. I'm just the guy that owns the building. We'll fill it up with people, and then I'm sure something will happen. I know a lot of people that are pastors." So, yeah. A couple times later, just kept going, and finally, I was like, "Okay, God, what are you trying to tell me here?" And my wife and I sitting there together, and I know she knew it in the back of her head before I did, because I'm a little bit slower on that part. But I finally admitted to somebody, I said, "Okay, great. I'll be a pastor." And when I did, I swear, I almost heard God smile. I don't know how you hear a smile, but I could. And when he called me into being the pastor of the church, he's like, "There are a lot of different views on who I am. There's too few views of who I really am." He said, "You have people on one side that are all fire and brimstone. There's nothing you can do. You're going to burn in hell because you're a terrible person. You sinned your whole life. And on the other side, there's, I call that kind of a hippie organization, but it's all kumbaya, love, love, love. Nothing you can do is wrong. We love you. God loves you. Come hang out with us, and we'll have bonfires and eat marshmallows." And God said, somewhere in the middle of that is truth. Once my people come back to me with fear and trembling, that's when they'll get to experience the depth, width, and height of my love for them. But they've got to understand who I am in power and strength before they can understand the depth of my love. Because that was what he wanted us to replicate here, was to take his love and build that into the relationships as we increase the strength, the spiritual growth in others, which is what he basically said was lacking in so many congregations, was that they want to keep you busy, but they don't want to pour time into you to help you grow. So he's told us, he said, "Seek me, come to me. Let me show you what I want to do. You guys have been told the gifts you have, but it's time that you share the gifts that I'm giving others so that they're aware that they have them." And I guess we'll put a little bow on it. That's my last part of my conclusion. I had to put conclusion on it because it wouldn't be formal, but let's put a pretty bow on it. And I agree, I had to have conclusion on it. But 25 years, my wife and I, a little bit longer than that now, but we ran around chasing stuff. Money, possessions, and none of that would fill us up. The only time we had a positive and a true positive change was when we sat down and we gave up. We said, "Okay, God, our way is terrible. We're agreeing with you now that your way is best, and we want what you've got to give us." He didn't want us for who we were. There was nothing I could have ever done that made God want me or love me. But he wanted and loved me because of who he is. And that through that, I could be a reflection of him to others, so that others could see, "Man, I don't know what's wrong with this dude. He's kind of weird, and I know where he came from, but he's got something serious going on now that I can't explain. So let's see what's going on." And I know the reason God gave me that testimony, I thought it was my own. I thought I was doing stuff on my own, and not necessarily against God, but I was doing things on my own, being a wild dude. you know, getting all kinds of scraps. But God's like, all that stuff that you did, it was in your plans from a day before time started, because now the testimony that you bring has more validity to those people that knew you when you were the old you, to see the change in who you are now, and that they know that you didn't do that on your own. They know that someone there was working with you. And the one thing I want you to tell them is that when God calls you and says, I have something for you, don't struggle. Don't worry. Don't think twice. Just say, God, yes, I will. It's always the best answer. Fini.